All right, let's quickly see how we can create a percent frequency table and bar plot using Excel 365, and it's just different enough to, making a little bit frustrating. So, all right, I'm going to start here with my question. We're going to be on question 4 here as our first data question. And part A is going to ask us to create this percent frequency table by ward and a bar plot for ward for our data that we've got. All right, I'm going to go back to my Excel 365 sheet that I uploaded earlier. And what I want to do is start off making the pivot table, kind of like what we did in the other instructional video, but this time using Excel 365. And to do this, I'm going to go ahead and just select first the data, the whole block of data to work with. I'm going to use my shortcut, Control Shift, down arrow to get all of the data that we have here. And then what I'll do is kind of similar. I'll go to Insert. I've got this pivot table option right here that I want to choose. And I'll check the first thing from table or range. That's what we just selected to give it some idea of what to make the table with. The first time I tried this, I ran into a couple problems. These settings weren't popping up, and I had to X out of the sheet and then open up again, and then it's been working fine since then. So if that's a problem, just, if you're ever having issues, just clear out and start over and get the sheet open again. We're going to create our own pivot table. I think these are some guesses that it thinks we want to do, but I'll go ahead and pick new sheet here, and they'll make our table that we're looking at. So it's going to be a pivot table for ward. And so what I know, I'm just going to check my variables that I have here. The one I'm interested in is ward. So you can do this a couple ways. You can just click this, and notice how what it's going to do right now is then create for each category its own row. And that's how a great way to kind of start our table that we have here. You can also, if you don't want to check it, we can drag it into the rows column as well to give us a little more flexibility. Notice that we have the categories, but we don't have our data. We haven't populated our table yet. To do that, we need to put something into the values. And because we're just focusing on the one variable here, I'm going to drag and drop this down into the values spot that we have. And our table is now populated, so we've got values in there. Notice when I X out, I'm not activating my table just yet. The table's not activated any longer. But if I select a cell inside there, the table's activated again, and I'm back to my settings where I can manipulate the table. The question does ask next to make it a percent frequency table, so we can convert these, are the raw counts that we have right here, we can convert those to percentages by going over here into our pivot table fields, and if you come over to the values, if you hit this and use value field settings, it'll give us two options. How do we want to summarize those values? Count is correct, but then I can change the show values as here from no calculation to percent of grand total. And so if I hit that, it makes that adjustment right here too. Another way you can do that, sometimes it's a little bit easier, is if you're just over here in the values that we have, if you right click, you can actually just come down here to show values as percent of grand total, and you can go back and forth with these right here. All right, we'll go back. Okay, now next we'd like to make our table. We'd like to make the plot from the table of data that we have here. Again, this is a little different. On the desktop app, it actually gives us a pivot chart option, making the chart. But right now, if we're on the pivot table, kind of like where we were, if we go back to insert here, you'll notice that we do have some charts available. We do have to be under the insert piece right here. And I'm going to pick this bar chart, or in this, they call it the clustered column chart. If you hit more, you can see it's just this first one right here. It's the same thing. If we select that, it will generate a chart straight from the data. So this isn't too bad. It's not exactly the same. Again, it does take a little bit of of playing around with it to figure it out, but we get our table that we're looking for here. And with this table, if I activate the table, now see how the table's selected. Notice how our options kind of change as we kind of go back and forth. I don't need to insert a pivot table, so I can get rid of that, but if I activate this chart again, and I click the chart up here, I get some options. I do want to change the chart title. It's never a bad idea to kind of put these in so that we know what we're working with here. Bar plots for wards. So we're good here. And then the legend, this is not necessary, but we don't need that total in there. But if you just want to get rid of the legend, you can do that in this case. Axis title on the x-axis. These are the wards. And our y-axis that we have here, the vertical axis. I think I'm on the right thing right here. We can say percent frequency. Okay. All right, we got our nice bar plot for wards. As you walk through this, and you can see visually, like one of the questions it wants to ask you, like we can kind of think about our sample, how representative that sample is. If it was representative, we would expect like everyone to have about the same proportion of wards, of houses in each ward, but we definitely don't see that here. So that can be your commentary that you add in later. If you want to on your sheet 2, just as a nice thing, you can rename sheet 2 so we know what it is. This has your bar plot and table. Okay. All right, so that's how we can use the pivot table, a little bit different to make the percent frequency, all that good stuff. All right, next, I think our next question is relating to histogram. All right, let me show you a little bit easier way to do this than maybe the way in the instructional video. Just a couple pieces of information. We're going to do our histogram for sales price, starting at $1,000, ending at $3,000, and we're going to group by 50. We'll see, we can get pretty close. It might not be exact to that. All right, so number one, I know I'm going to create this histogram for sale price that I have right here. So what I'm going to do is select this data by using Control-Shift down arrow, our shortcut that we have. All right, so I'm going to use that shortcut. And what I want to do next is I'm going to go back to insert. I'm kind of doing this first again just to make it easier for the app. So selecting it first, it's not that we can't go back and choose the data, but it just kind of tells Excel, I'm going to make this chart and here's the data that I already want you to use. So just, again, it's just kind of helping it run a little smoother. All right, so then insert's going to have our charts. This is going to be easier than the instructional video. I think this is a newer function that Excel had that it wasn't always available to us, but this will be really nice. You're going to go to the charts here, and we need more charts, so click the little arrow and scroll to the very bottom, and you'll notice we actually have a chart here called histogram. So you can use this one. I'm going to go ahead and click it, and we get our histogram. So this is actually pretty nice, pretty convenient, and you have your data right here, so you should be able to get that histogram pretty easily. Let's change our title here. We'll change it to histogram for sales price. That's our variable that we're looking at here. Our x-axis is also broken down by sales price, so I'll change that horizontal axis here. Okay, and then over here is the frequency or the count. So my y-axis right here, I'm going to change that to frequency. Okay, now we're pretty close, but we need to do one more thing here. And that's we want to adjust the bins and maybe see if we can change the scale here. All right, a couple ways we can do that. If I'm in my chart, now if I ever get out of my chart, don't worry. We can just reactivate it. So notice how I'm back home. But if I click back on my chart here, notice how this chart is kind of available now if I hit that again. And what I'm looking for is to format. I need to format my chart so I can find that here. or I can also right click and format as an option. Either way, it does the same thing. All right. Now for this particular case, we do know with the histogram, like it's already set the gap width to 0, so that's under the horizontal axis. I don't really care about that too much. I want to, under the format, I want to change the series. All right, and what I want to do in this case is I'm going to change the bins from auto to, I want to say the bin width that we have here. All right, so now in this case, it's set to 23,000, but I'm going to change it to 50,000, and I'm going to be happy with what we've got right here, what this looks like, and this is going to be a pretty good histogram that we're looking for here. Pretty close to kind of like what we're looking for. Okay. All right. So those are the two ways you can do that. I think the next question asks like the same stuff. If we come back here, percent frequency table and bar plot, histogram for bill, choose your own bin width, all that stuff. So a great option would be just to put that data back in here and use Excel 365. And you should be able to kind of get all that stuff and use it, and it should be no problem. All right. Good luck.